Hi, it's Kifin Lobates here, and video 14 in a series commissioned by the Helsinki Blockchain Center. And today I just want to talk a little bit about on-chain versus off-chain data and some of the issues surrounding that. Recently I've been talking to a number of people who are, in my view, becoming on-chain data maximalists. They believe that all data should, if at all possible, be stored on a blockchain, and they're working on techniques and methods in order to do this. So first we have to look at the different categories of data that you can have. There's on-chain data that is generated on the blockchain, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. Then there's on-chain data that came in from outside the blockchain but is now immutably stored in a time-stamped record. Then you have off-chain data in file systems where there's some level of verification that the data is still has integrity. These are things like the Interplanetary File System. And finally you have anything goes free for all databases where you have no real confidence in the record of the data, how it has changed over time, or what it is all about. Here I'm thinking of a database with an administrator who has the power to go and rewrite the record of what data transactions were written to the database, and therefore they can rewrite history in a way that just cannot be done with blockchain. So 4 categories in total. So if we go back to the first one, blockchain data that is on-chain and was generated on-chain, well, this, for example, is what happens with the recording of balances of cryptocurrencies. There is an input from the outside world when someone triggers a transaction, but the whole data flow, or the change of data flow that happens on the blockchain, is happening hermetically. It's happening within the blockchain, and there's other than that initial nudge from the outside world, the data flow transactions are taking place on chain. So that's the whole idea behind a blockchain instantiating cryptocurrencies, is that you can fully trust that a balance of an account at a given time really is that, subject to some issues about probabilistic finality in adding blocks to a blockchain, but we won't get down into the nitty-gritties in this video. The second type of on-chain data is data that is written from the outside world onto the chain, and this is where some people have misconceptions. They believe that blockchain data must be true, but that's patently not the case. I can write a string to the Ethereum blockchain that claims that I am the King of Spain, and that does not make me the King of Spain. I am still who I am. It's just that I have made that claim, and that claim will be recorded in a time-stamped immutable manner on the blockchain, so that I can't later deny that I made that claim, but it doesn't make that claim true necessarily. So that's the 2 types of on-chain data. And the second type is improved upon by things called oracles, where you set up incentive schemes so that people will receive financial rewards if they report data that is subsequently verified by other people to be true, and they may suffer financial penalties if they lie when they submit the data. This allows you to get the dollar price of cryptocurrency onto the blockchain so that smart contracts can work with it, things like that. The third type of data I talked about was things like the Interplanetary File System. There, the integrity of a file that is stored on it can be verified, because the file is hashed, and that hash is used as the name for the file. So if you subsequently change even 1 bit of the data, you will end up with a different new hash, and therefore people can check whether or not the file has integrity or whether it's been tampered with. What you can't guarantee is persistence. I can put a file on the Interplanetary File System and give you a link to it, and then at a later date I can delete it, or in the terminology of the IPFS, I can unpin it. Now you can't get access to the data anymore. So it kind of gives you part of the blockchain story, in that it allows you to verify that a file is valid if you can find it, but it doesn't guarantee that you'll be able to find it. And then, as I said, finally you have conventional databases where anything goes. Depending on how they've been set up, there's the potential for administrators to do whatever they want, and therefore ultimately you are purely trusting, in a human sense, the company or the person who's running it, rather than having any kind of mechanical guarantees of trust. So this one's gone on a bit longer than the Helsinki Blockchain Center videos normally do, but I hope you found it interesting, and I'll see you in the next video soon. Bye for now.